Okay, let's talk about another interesting subject right here because this is something that I've been writing on, and actually, I talk about Lou's take on this in one of the videos, but it's not done editing yet. They're taking me a long time to edit. My first video, I've got a series of 3 videos on orcs and the personhood of orcs and how they manifest in fantasy over the years. The first video is out. So the first video you can find on the channel. The second video is going to be a timeline. Second and third, I believe, are both timelines, but they're taking a long time to edit. And I talk about Lou's placement of that in here. But I think that his take on this is very interesting. So do you want to talk about your philosophy of orcs and how that has manifested in your worlds?
It's always bothered me since I was a kid that the orcs are just wiped out. They run into the forest and they don't come out, and there are no more orcs. And it was always bothered me that it was okay to commit genocide against them because they're just unilaterally bad. And years ago, before I even knew I was going to write a novel, I said, if I ever write a novel, my orcs are not going to be mindless, evil savages that you can just butcher indiscriminately. They're going to be the most sophisticated people on the planet. And I came back to that in my second novel, where they're not called orcs, they're called Oskiri, but they're gray-skinned, white-haired orcs. And the Oskiri, they are expansionistic empire. They do want to conquer, but they want to do so because they feel that they have a compulsion to elevate the rest of the world to their level. So they come in, conquer a place, kill the leaders, then they build libraries and schools, and everybody becomes part of the Oskirian empire. And I have a character named Dargan Urgal, who is an ambassador from the Oskiri Empire, who's traveling the world because he thinks all the barbarians are charming, but he wants to see them before they get inevitably absorbed into his own empire for the greater good. And I like that about them. So there's no savage brute orc. There's just a highly expansionistic, highly superior culture.
I think that the humanization of the orc has been something that has gone on over the decades.
It probably goes back to that original World of Warcraft game.
I think it does.
Yeah, where you can play as the human or you can play as the orc.
As far as I've been able to find, that was the first. And other people in the chat and who are watching, please let me know if you have another reference. But that's the earliest reference, the original Warcraft Orcs versus Human, that started to introduce this idea of kind of orc as a person in a broad sense. Maybe there's an earlier reference. I would love to find it. But whenever I ask, people also bring up that one.
Well, you've seen that cartoon where the people who worship the rabbit god and the people who worship the duck god, and they're trying to wipe each other out.
No, I haven't seen
it. Oh, it's hysterical. It's just a bunch of knights on 2 hillsides, and they're both charging into the valley, and they're both like, we worship the one true rabbit god, but they worship the duck god. And it's a silhouette that looks like this. And so depending on how you do it, it's a duck or a rabbit. And that's what World of Warcraft was for me, the original one, because you play as the human, then you play as the orc. And the resource building is exactly the same. And so it's impossible to play both sides for any length of time without realizing that who's good and who's bad is a matter of where you're standing.
Does your
very subversive for an early video game?
And it has had a whole lot of impact because I think also as you have people who are playing orcs, they become less demonic. I think probably because game companies also, if you're going to be playing this, probably also, it's a cycle. Then we should probably tone down a demonic aspect of this. Especially with the satanic panic and things like that, orcs can just be like people, right? How do you think that that your own views on the demonic or existence of evil influence that opinion that you had on orcs?
I don't know. I have not explored what the hells are in my world yet. There's a fascinating book called The Big Book of Hell, by the way. It came out a long time ago, 20, 25 years ago, which is an examination of all the different cultures of the world's views on afterlives that punish you. And I don't know what place it holds in, because in Norengard, there's no place of punishment. When you die, you either, if you're not selected for one of the warriors' halls, then you go to Neth's Cave, which is just kind of a place where everybody else goes, but it might be boring, but it's not a place of punishment. and the people who are evil linger on as Draugr, as the undead in their burrows. So the ones who are too consumed by anger or greed or lust or regret to properly die linger near the surface in their graves as undead. And so that is the hell. It's a hellish existence of being, of being unable to fully die, and having this undead existence. I I feel like there's Star Trek, Star Wars, and Doctor Who. Star Trek, evil is a verb, not a noun. Evil is ignorance. It's a lack of understanding. It's failure to appreciate that we're all one, that everyone should, and that enlightened altruism is the better philosophy. And so the progress in Star Trek is for races like the Klingons, who are evil races to begin with, to become rehabilitated as they evolve and mature. And Doctor Who, evil is a real thing. It's the monster from outer space who's made a deal with the greedy corporate guy to sell out the Earth, and it's a noun. And in Star Wars, I don't. It's just a back and forth that's continual. And I think I prefer the Star Trek perspective on evil.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Well, that's interesting. Because in this series on orcs that I'm working on, once I get past the timeline, I've been trying to come up with my own, some kind of analysis and synthesis of it. And I think it does have to do with your take on it, with whether or not someone does believe in an objective evil or whether they don't. Yeah. And then, and where our society is and how that changes, has changed orcishness to our society. Because, if assuming you do believe in a good and evil, like if you're good and evil, you wouldn't want to demonize the human. Things that are human should not be demonized because you're supposed to recognize their humanity. But then perhaps we should also recognize the reverse of that, which is, well, you don't want to humanize the demonic. If you believe in evil, you don't want to humanize it. That would also be something that was bad. If you believed in that as, a metaphysical thing. And I think there's something in there, but I'm still working on thinking all the way through that and what that is. Because actually, do you know that there are people who call the Russian soldiers in Ukraine orcs?
No, that's hysterical.
If you go to Reddit, because that is part of the thing. I was like, well, this is sort of my theme of, demonizing the human, because I found some pictures of this from Reddit for people who have actually drawn the Russian soldiers as orcs. And then also it's not uncommon to just refer to Russian soldiers as killing orcs. And I think there's probably an academic article in it, if I were to go back to academic writing. So I think there's probably a lot more to the philosophy of orcishness that we should continue to talk about in society today. Yeah. If you enjoyed this video, please like, subscribe, and all of that jazz. It really helps a lot. But also, please check out The Cultists, the web series on this channel about modern-day D&D playing Lovecraftian cultists who just want to worship Cthulhu in a world full of people who just don't understand. Season 1 is on the channel now. But also, please check out my YouTube channel. I have over 150 videos on tabletop games and the fantasy genre. If you've enjoyed this video, you might enjoy many of them as well. I look forward to seeing you for them and many more videos to come.